Hey everybody, hope you're having a good day. Just want to talk about exactly um, what the hell happened today. It didn't help with the red card. The Galatasaray are a very good team. Let's not kid ourselves. They had some pretty talented, strong players, and they did pretty good in the group stage. Osimhen and Icardi, they got some pretty good quality, but Juventus never had a chance. They never had a chance because, again, the Pro Inter FIGC purposely, deliberately scheduled a Derby d'Italia before a Champions League playoff. Who does that? Are you trying to help your country, your country's teams go as far in Europe as can be? Galatasaray, the Turkish Federation, did not put their teams at a disadvantage with the timing of when the Champions League playoff round is played. Galatasaray, they played on a Friday. They played against a bottom relegation side. They didn't have to use much energy on that game. Players are physically exhausted, physically drained. Derbies are physically draining games. I can tell you what happened with FIGC. They assumed Inter would finish top 8 in the Champions League group stage. They assumed Inter would not play in this playoff round after the Derby d'Italia. They certainly were trying to disadvantage Juventus before the Champions League playoff. They actively are trying to get Juventus knocked out of Europe, and we never had a chance. Jonathan David was hurt. He was not going to be fully recovered from Derby d'Italia. Bremer was not fully recovered. He had to leave the game today because of a knock. If Bremer was in there, Juventus would get a result. I'm not saying they win, but they get a draw or at worst a 1-goal deficit. And that's very manageable to bring back to Torino for the second leg. But you see, you want to gain as much coefficient point for your country's teams as possible, but that's not what FIGC are doing. They are deliberately pro-Inter. They knew what they were doing, scheduling this Derby d'Italia right before Champions League playoff. You can't tell me they weren't trying to hurt Juventus with that inherent disadvantage. Why, in other countries, do they not want to disadvantage their teams before the Champions League playoff round? Take a look at PSG. They're losing 2-0 right now, but again, like Galatasaray, PSG played on a Friday and not on a Saturday, and they played Brest. It's not a derby. It's not Marseille. It's not Lyon. It's not Monaco. They played a match on a Friday that would not be as physically draining and exhausting, unlike Juventus. You take a look at Real Madrid. And now, this isn't Atletico Derby. This is not Villarreal. This is not El Clasico. Now, they played Sociedad. Are Sociedad a good team? Yes, they are. But again, they didn't play a physically draining derby before a Champions League playoff round. Dortmund didn't play a derby. Who did Dortmund play last week? Yeah. They played Mainz on a Friday. See, everybody's play on Fridays. Everybody's play on a Friday, it seems like, except for this team and Real Madrid. But no derby. Who schedules a derby before a Champions League playoff round unless if you're trying to actively disadvantage a particular club in the competition? They're actively hurting, trying to sabotage Juventus' Champions League campaign. The red card, that was the right call. Cabal got beat pretty bad. But all this pro-Inter bias and the FIGC stems from mere pettiness of the FIGC over the Juventus Super League coup in 2021. They need to get over this vindictive pettiness and realize that Agnelli is no longer running Juventus. The Super League mastermind with Florentino Perez is no longer with Juventus. And the new board members have denounced and distanced themselves from the Super League project. It's time for the FIGC to get over the pettiness of the Super League coup back in 2021. They're still petty with Juventus over, it was 5 years ago. Yeah, some people say the president, Gravina, is an Inter fan. I can't confirm if he's an Inter fan or not, but certainly the whole source of the bias of FIGC stems from the entire Super League attempt, and it's time for FIGC to get over this pettiness whatsoever. I don't know if any other top administrators where their allegiances lie as far as club goes. If it's for Milan, if it's for Juve, it's for Inter, if it's for any other clubs. But that decision, the Derby d'Italia, the ref was from Rome, and who's trying to get in top four? Roma. Juventus had a penalty against Lazio. It was not awarded. So they're actively trying to hurt and sabotage Juventus with these decisions. Do they just want an interesting top four race until the final match day of the season? That's probably the case. I think these recent decisions for Inter, they certainly are afraid of bottling and choking away the Scudetto like last year. It was not going to be one with blood, sweat, and tears on the field. It was going to be one thanks to a dubious referee decision that not only robs Juventus of top four hopes, but also robs Milan of an honest opportunity to get back in the Scudetto race. But man, all of this anti-Juve corruption has to end. There's no way a derby should be scheduled before a Champions League playoff round. You cannot tell me they were not trying to disadvantage Juventus. Who doesn't try to maximize their country's coefficient as much? Only Serie A. And bad karma in Europe is still going to continue. Just take a look at the 5 pairs, the 5-0 in the Champions League final. And further humiliations are going to continue for Inter and the rest of the Pro Inter FIGC. You had referees that robbed Barcelona and robbed Bayern of a penalty, that robbed Barcelona of the victory. But you see, because that was an attacking foul. He stepped on the Rajo, the Inter player. So now they're getting calls in Europe too. In the group stage a couple years ago, where they gave Inter a phantom penalty in the same exact play. They didn't award Barcelona the penalty, and that's the only reason why they're able to qualify for the knockout, even make it to the 2023 Champions League final. The source of the UEFA bias, I think, is suffering. I forgot who was the godfather of whose child, Agnelli's child or Agnelli to Seferi's child. But they were friends, Agnelli and Seferi is angry at Agnelli, and I know that decisions are still going to go against Juventus. I don't know what needs to happen. Well, FIGC needs to stop hurting the coefficient in Europe for starters. That's number one. Hopefully, bad karma will continue to hit Inter. That 5-0 loss in the final was nothing but karma for past misdeeds. The loss to Atletico in the round of 16, the loss against Liverpool. Who doesn't want to disadvantage their country? Who doesn't want to advantage their country's teams in Europe? Only the FIGC. Only the FIGC. You can get away with blatant diving without even being touched and get away with it. Derby Day Italia in the world stage, that's an embarrassment. Get over the pettiness of the Super League coup. It's over. It's over. Juventus are no longer part of the Super League project. When is the FIGC going to get over this vindicative pettiness? When is it going to end? But all I have to say for Inter is that this purposely, deliberately scheduling disadvantage, you found yourselves in the playoff round in Bodo Glimt. They already beat Atletico and Manchester City. It would be bloody karma if Bodo Glimt knock out another Italian team. Bodo Glimt are coming for you. Bodo Glimt are going to make you suffer. Bodo Glimt, if they manage to knock out Inter, this is nothing but bloody karma and poetic justice. The most disgusting team in calcio in modern times, in recent times, is Inter 100%. For anybody who pays attention to Italian football and they're just not spewing the garbage and the rubbish and they don't look into the entirety of Calciopoli, it's not a Juventus thing. It's a big club thing. It's every big club trying to select officials, Inter included. Because Telecom Italia, their Inter president is a shareholder of the company who has the recordings over the conversations with the referees. Moratti, the president of Inter at the time, the owner, was having the same conversations with referees that Moji had. So that's kind of as far as it's not really recent because it was 2 decades ago, but in a nutshell, why it appeared Juventus had the favorable decisions. Well, Italian football was in the gutter house in the 2010s. Every club was literally shit. I mean, Inter and Milan were mid-table. So, of course, the establishment in the 2010s gave decisions to Juventus because that was the only decent team in Calcio. That was the only team that was going to carry the shield in the flag during the 2010s. Because if Juventus weren't going to go far, then the entirety of Italian football was dead during the 2010s. But now this agenda is continuing, and in the big 3 teams of the North are in Champions League qualification. It's not like one team has to carry the whole country, but this doesn't have to happen. But Inter are by far the most favored team in the league as far as referee decisions goes, as far as getting away with diving. Today was not on the players, it was on the schedule makers. I've given you plenty of examples of teams that played their matches on Fridays, and they certainly didn't play derbies. Only Serie A do they try to disadvantage their teams before they play in the Champions League. Only Serie A. No wonder why this league is in the gutter. Shitty stadiums, garbage to watch in the stands, awful. Biased officiating, I think it's worse than England. There's plenty of bad officiating in La Liga. Whenever it's pro Real Madrid or pro Barca, Premier League is pretty bad too. Michael Oliver accepts money from the UAE to referee matches. Man City's owners are UAE, but still he's able to manage Arsenal matches. So referees are very bad all across Europe. I can't say much about Bundesliga referees. I don't know how biased they are. I know Bayern Munich gets some decisions from time to time. Bayern Munich got away with conceding a penalty in the DFB Pokal quarterfinal against Red Bull Leipzig. But it's corruption has to stop. This is all I have to say.